I'm in Martin Place in Sydney, outside the office of former Prime Minister John Howard, and I'm keen to talk to him at what feels like a big moment for the election campaign, big moment for the world. Donald Trump's tariff decision. How worried should we be about it? What does it mean for Australia? What does it mean for our alliance with the United States? And how should the government be responding to this and preparing Australia for what lies ahead? I'm David Spears on Gadigal land. Welcome to Insiders on Background. Mr. Howard, thanks so much for talking to us. I want to start with Donald Trump, obviously. You have been a close friend of the United States, a strong supporter of its role in the world for many, many years. What do you make of this decision he's made on tariffs?
Well, I'll start by saying that I'm still a close friend of the United States. I still believe that we must maintain to the full our security relationship, and the friendship between our two countries goes deeper than defence. It's a sharing of common values, although we are very different people. A lot of Australians make the mistake of assuming Americans are like us. They're not. Americans are more, well, let me put it this way, they're less sceptical than we are.
Is that right?
Well, Australia has a very deep deposit of what I call Celtic scepticism. I think one of the reasons why it's very hard to get a referendum carried in Australia is that we are inherently suspicious of people who come along with grand designs to solve the world. They sort of say, you know, what's he really want?
Right.
It's true.
Maybe we can come back to that.
Yeah,
but
I'm sorry.
On Trump, though,
Yeah.
and the tariff decision,
Well,
what do you make of this one?
Well, I think it's bad economics. Not only bad economics for a number of countries, but it's bad for the United States. I worked out a long time ago that you don't save jobs by introducing tariffs. You cost jobs. And Australia cut tariffs with the support of both sides of politics at a time when some people said, oh, if you do that, you're going to cost jobs. You don't. So I don't agree with it economically, and I think politically it's also an unwise move. I mean,
you think this will hurt him?
Well, I don't know. We'll wait and see. There's a midterm election, and there are some signs of disquiet, but that's a matter for him, and I'm not going to give long-range political advice. I'm just going to make the observation that I think it's a bad economic decision. It's bad for America and it's bad for world trade.
Do you agree with Anthony Albanese that it's not the act of a friend? Is that how you'd put it?
Well, I think we should, to use that ancient British expression, keep calm and carry on, or remain calm and carry on. I don't know that trying to invoke words of censure and outrage necessarily help. I'll just confine myself to an observation that it's a bad decision economically. I think it will, over time, damage rather than help the American economy. And it does have more severe an impact on some poor countries, particularly in our part of the world. And I think of some of those countries in sub-Saharan Africa and South America where there are still areas of real poverty.
Do you think there's a strategic concern here too? Because you're right, some of the Southeast Asian neighbours we have, Indonesia, Vietnam, Cambodia, they've all been hit with very high tariffs compared to what we've copped. Does that see them draw closer to China?
Well, some people will say that. It's too early to tell. I mean, he only made the announcement yesterday. And the new American president is certainly unpredictable. I don't think you've heard the last word from him on tariffs. I don't share his rapture with tariffs as an economic device.
Clearly, yeah.
And not many people who have seriously studied the progress of the world over the last 40 or 50 years do. I mean, we've liberated more people from poverty through things like low tariffs, through globalisation, than just about any other device.
Are we seeing here a global realignment, an American retreat from its role in the world?
I don't believe so. I think it's altogether too early. I can understand because there's been a fanfare and he's made a big fuss about it, and it was against the backdrop of that very regrettable White House meeting involving the president of Ukraine.
Vladimir Zelensky. And his comments about NATO. And
yeah, all of that. Now, I don't... I believe very strongly that the relationship between the American people and the rest of the free world, which I still choose to call it, remains strong. Now, it's going to vary according to who's president, and it's far too early to jump to any conclusions about what Trump has done and what it means.
Because Paul Keating has said that this marks the death knell of NATO, and it should inform other allied relationships as well, including ANZUS.
Well, I don't believe that it marks the death knell of NATO, if Keating has said that. Has he said that? Well, I don't agree with him. I think we've just got to remain calm, carry on, and not overreact. It's just too early. Till now, I disagree strongly with what he has announced. I disagree with tariffs as a device. But I don't think that he will escape internal domestic censure.
And that could correct the
Well, it could.
position
And,
of
I mean, although America does not have a parliamentary system, there's a midterm election, and there are already some signs in the two, we call them by-elections, in Florida, was it? And also the horror of horrors, voting for a judge in
in Wisconsin, I think it was.
in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Now,
He sees all of those things, is the point, I suppose. He is aware of public sentiment and reactive to it.
we'll wait and
Yeah,
see.
we'll see. In terms of keeping calm and carrying on, what Australia should do from here, what does that look like?
Well, I think Australia should understand the context in which we've copped it, and we've copped this 10%. It's a lot less significant than many other countries, but we should continue to put our case, but it's just got to be done very, very calmly, methodically and sensibly. It's not going to be achieved by threatening. I mean, heavens above.
Was it possible, do you think, to avoid this at all?
Look, it would have been, given the amplitude, given the massive spread which was revealed yesterday, probably not, but I only say that in retrospect. Now, that's not a case for not having tried hard or trying hard. I mean, I remember way back in the early, more than 20 years ago, the Bush administration put some steel tariffs on.
I remember that.
And we were able to achieve just about a total exemption. And the European Union attacked me for not having joined them in a WTO application. Well, my response then was, well, we were happy with the outcome, and that owed something to the relationship that I had with the then president.
But you doubt whether that would have been possible,
well,
given Trump's blanket
David,
approach?
I mean, honestly, I don't know. This is not an occasion to...
But looking at Donald Trump and the
well,
blanket approach he's taken here.
He's in love with tariffs. He said that. I'm not, and I don't think it's sensible economics to be so. And when you look at the major economic reforms in Australia over the last 30, 40 years, reducing tariffs has been part of the deal.
Absolutely. In terms of how we try and convince the Trump administration now to exempt Australia, what should be on the table? We hear a lot about critical minerals. What should we be offering, or do we just...
Well, I'll obviously leave that to the Prime Minister and the opposition leader. They're the main players. I'm not in favour of, myself, I'm not in favour of using an asset as a bargaining chip, like critical minerals. That doesn't appeal to me. That's something that we should see as an asset. We are very lucky as a nation. We have 38% of the world's easily recoverable uranium reserve. We have massive deposits of coal. We have enormous supplies of gas, and Peter Dutton's got a very sensible policy on gas.
I might come to that too, but it's interesting. You're saying we should make our case on the principle, not necessarily use a bargaining chip.
Well, I don't think it's, I think that sort of thing can be sort of counterproductive. That's my view.
What about bringing the defence relationship into the...
Oh no, I would never put that, I would always keep that separate. That's national security. And the idea that we would, what are we going to, we're going to wave our fists at the United States, really, on defence? Given the history of our relationship and given what happened in World War II, and given our alliance with the United States recently in Afghanistan and Iraq, and previously to that in Vietnam, no. I still see the United States, because of our common values, as our major security partner, and we should never so treat that with the contempt that using it as a bargaining chip would represent.
Peter Dutton has suggested defence could be part of the conversation in terms
of...
I
didn't hear that.
What more we could do with defence industry?
Well, I'm not sure, but it's a wonderful phrase, part of the conversation. I don't see Peter, and I know that he has absolutely no interest in putting our security relationship up for grabs.
But you're basically saying leave those sort of things off the table.
Well, look, I think the most important, pragmatically speaking, the most important element of our relationship with the United States is the defence ambit, founded very much on ANZUS, but also on the going back to World War I, the Battle of Hamel, and we've side by side. And I don't think that is, the value of that is lost on Americans. It's and it will be brought home, I'm sure, to the President as time goes by.
Do you think this sort of thing changes the Australian public view of the United States, that it might erode trust in the relationship?
Well, I hope it doesn't, and once again, it's too early to tell. I mean, I can remember way back when Bob Hawke was Prime Minister, and when the then American President, which was 41, George H.W. Bush, came to Australia, and there were the National Farmers Federation, then led by Ian McLaughlin, led a very vigorous campaign, but it didn't, and complaining bitterly about America's rough trade treatment of our farmers, but it didn't affect the attitude of the Australian people. I mean, mind you, the worst we suffered on relation to our farmers is, of course, from the European Union. I never enjoyed a happy relationship with the European Union.
On the trade front?
No.
No, but does this mean we should, do you think there'll be an appetite to review AUKUS, to think again
Well, I don't
about...
look, I think it would be very, very foolish to even talk about reviewing AUKUS. AUKUS has only just been inked. And you've got people running around saying it's not going to work out. Now, we need AUKUS. I think the idea of having nuclear submarines some years into the future is very valuable.
But do you think people go, this is an unreliable ally in the White House? The world order is changing. We're seeing it happen. We need to have a rethink.
One of the things I've always said about the American alliance is that it endures irrespective of which party's in power. When we made our commitment, and was widely criticised in Australia under the Menzies government, to send an infantry battalion to Vietnam, that was done by a centre-right Prime Minister in support of a centre-left President in the United States, Menzies and Johnson. And it just epitomised the fact that it's a relationship. And the Labor Party has said this repeatedly. I mean, I've lost count of the number of times that the Labor Party boasts about how they invented the alliance with America. Now, that's a stretch. They didn't. But the truth is that both sides of politics value it. and both sides of politics should resist, and I'm sure our side will, the temptation to slag America because of a very unwise set of decisions by its current leader.
Let me get some thoughts, Mr. Howard, on the current election campaign. You, of course, well, I think you really were the last to do serious tax reform in Australia. This election, would you agree, we're seeing piecemeal changes offered? There's no serious reform being put forward at this election from either side.
Well, the tax reform that I sought endorsement of was sought from the sanctuary, if I can put it that way, of government, with a very large majority. I mean, the majority I won in '96 was huge, and we lost a lot of seats. I mean, the night of the 1998 election,
just scraped back in.
I got an exit poll which showed us well behind, and it wasn't until Anthony Green declared that we were going to win that I reached for another drink.
So you're saying you can do this stuff in government?
Well, I'm saying that
opposition.
it is easier to do something as big as that. Now, look, I think it's too early to tell, and there are significant differences, and we have. I think the changes the current government's made to industrial relations are bad.
But Peter Dutton's not touching them, is he?
Well, we don't know what he's touching yet. He's only just started the campaign.
That brings me to another of your famous lines. You can't fatten the pig on market day.
That's true.
Has he left policy positions too late in the piece?
No, I don't think so. I really don't. Every campaign is different. One of the interesting features of this campaign is what happens to the teal vote. There's an assumption made by most of the commentators that the teals will just all hold their seats.
You don't think so?
I'm not sure about that. If you accept that some of the teals were elected with the votes of unhappy Liberals who didn't like the former Liberal government, then some of those seats could be up for grabs. I mean, I live in the now abolished seat of North Sydney, and I've talked to a lot of Liberal candidates in teal seats, and there's a fluidity, there's a volatility in that vote that hasn't been there before.
What about making the case to the Australian people, given if we still don't know where Peter Dutton stands on industrial relations, what about
Well, I think he made his position on IR very clear when the government made all those changes.
But it's not clear that he's going to undo
well,
any of those.
Look, precisely how he expresses himself on that is a matter for the campaign.
Right.
And we've only just started it, but let it be understood that Peter Dutton strongly opposed all those changes.
Should he repeal them?
Well, that's something that I won't give advice on
fair enough.
at this stage.
What about the approach we're seeing from the Liberals today of being prepared to intervene in the gas market, to have a gas reservation on existing projects, intervene in supermarkets and the insurance companies with divestment powers?
Well, I'm not a big divester. I think the trade practices legislation is probably adequate if you need to amend it. And that could well become a coalition government elected.
So is this sort of market intervention not really the Liberal Party of John Howard?
Specifically in relation to supermarkets. Now, the other one
Gas.
The gas. Well, I think the gas. I mean, we've had a gas reservation policy in Western Australia under a Liberal Western Australian government for years.
But can you do it retrospectively to existing projects?
Depends how you define retrospectively.
Existing projects where private sectors poured in billions to develop gas projects.
Yeah, but look, I can't pretend to be across all the detail of what might happen, but what I can say, the notion of preserving Australian gas for Australian people is sound. There's nothing odd about that. How is that any different from having a foreign investment policy which promotes the national interest ahead of any other interest.
What about taxes? Peter Dutton's saying he would put up the tax rate that was lowered on the last day of Parliament.
Well, he also said he'd do something big on excise.
Fuel excise.
And I think the average punter understands that
Right.
better. I mean, we are a great car-owning, driving democracy, particularly those of us who live in the outer... I live in the inner suburb, and those who live in the outer suburbs, we drive a lot.
Sure, but for the Liberal Party to say we're going to put up your personal income tax rate...
Yeah, but hang on,
you never would have done that.
Well, look, for the Liberal Party to make an offer which involves the expenditure of money without explaining where it might come from is not part of our brand. It's not the behaviour of economically literate and sensible people.
Isn't he doing that on fuel excise though?
Beg pardon?
Isn't he doing that on fuel excise though?
What do you mean he's doing?
Not telling us where the money's coming
from? Well, I think he's indicated that given that he made the announcement on fuel excise at the same time as Mr Albanese offering, what, 70 cents a week or something in a year's time?
I think, yeah, it's...
Something like that.
It's
not much.
$5 a week, $5 a week, $10 in the second year. Anyway, let me ask you about who you think's going to win this election, Mr Howard. We've still got 4 weeks to go, but...
I find it very hard to pick. I thought that last election was let me put it this way, I was not the least bit surprised that we lost. We've been there a long time. Previous election, I thought we would win. It did not surprise me that Bill Shorten fell short. And he promised to put up everybody's tax. A lot of people put up a lot of their tax, quite a bit. That's never a smart thing to do, because people work hard and they like to control most of what they earn.
So this is close.
I think it's very close. And I think one of the big imponderables is what happens in the Teal-held seats, because if there's a general movement back of people who voted Teal out of disgruntlement with the former Liberal government, if that occurs, I think you could have a surprisingly good result for the coalition.
And is Australia just finally, whoever wins this, best placed to weather this uncertainty that we are facing globally?
Well, obviously I think we'd be better placed if we have a coalition government, but as a nation we have a lot going for us. We have Providence gifted wonderful natural resources, we have a stable, cohesive population, we have a good electoral system, and I think, unlike people in other countries, we will accept the result. I mean, I hope it's a coalition government, but if it isn't, well, I'll put it down to bad luck. And I think Peter Dutton has really been a miracle worker. I never thought 6 months ago that people would be talking about the possibility of a coalition win.
But if you were to give him a bit of advice right now, what would it be? Well,
keep going as he is. I think he's doing very well.
Mr Howard, good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Great pleasure.
So if you have any thoughts on the chat, do drop us a line, insiders@abc.net.au. We'll have a lot more on the impact of Donald Trump and these tariffs on this election contest on Sunday morning. I'll be talking to the Nationals leader David Littleproud, as well as the Foreign Minister Penny Wong. Remember, we've got extended 90-minute editions of Insiders on Sundays through the campaign. So do join us 9 a.m. on ABC TV.
You're making us all feel very excited about being here.